So we create the world we want to see by getting gayer and gayer every year.
Hello, my fellow weirdos, fiends, and liminal beings. Welcome back to my Queerator interview series. I am here today with Cai Kagawa. Cai, would you please introduce yourself to everybody, who you are, pronouns, identity, a little bit about what you do?
Oh my gosh. Well, hi everyone. I'm Kai. I use he, they, and she pronouns. I am a tabletop creative. I am in the tabletop space. I am a performer over on Transplanted RPG, among 1,000 other places. I am a tabletop designer and consultant. I have worked with companies like Dimension 20, Critical Role, Darrington Press, a bunch more stuff to be announced. I am all over the tabletop space. And then on top of that, I am also a costume designer, a Yahtzee 705 costumer, and a costume historian and researcher. So I wear 1,000 hats at all times.
With all those many hats, how did you get here to where you are today?
When I say, like, I just kind of go where the river takes me, I mean it. I started, my dream when I was very young was to do sport good. No joke. I was a sport kid. My highest aspiration when I was in high school was to be a Olympic athlete. I got pretty far down that trail and then realized I hated it. I was an NCAA Division I athlete over in UC Berkeley, was having a not good time, got injured, and just said, you know what? I'm good, actually. I walked away from that and pursued another dream that I'd had since I was a kid that I didn't have time for, which was suddenly theater. Theater department there embraced me. I fell in love with costuming. I dabbled in acting and some other disciplines in theater, but then when I graduated pretty much entirely focused on costuming. And the sidebar of all of that, because nothing I do is on its own path. They all end up kind of intertwining over time, which is kind of why I say, like, I just go where the river flows, because it has worked, even if sometimes I feel like I'm swimming upstream and not down it. Because I was also a active member of fan communities. I have been in like various forms of fandom since I can remember. I've been a cosplayer, fan artist, relatively prolific in certain spaces in that way. So when I graduated, I not only wanted to be a costuming professional, but I was still pursuing all kinds of storytelling and especially transformative works like cosplay and fan art outside of that. And it will come back. Don't you worry. This is where it gets really funny, because then through both of those spaces, I was a costuming professional at the Disneyland Resort in Southern California for 6 years, where I did everything from dressing characters to doing shows and inventory and maintenance. I did a lot of really fun, very specific work when I was there. Had a really good time. Worked on some very cool stuff like Aladdin Musical Spectacular, Jedi Training Trials of the Temple, RIP. I love all of my shows. They're all gone now. But I had a really good time working there, but wanted more. And at the time, I thought that more was being a professional costume designer for film and television, because I love costumes. I love the stories that they have to tell. But at the end of the day, they all have the same thing in common, which is I love stories. It's why I like transformative works. It's why I like costuming. It's why I've always been interested in acting. But even when I was in college, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I'm a non-binary person of color. I am mixed. And it didn't go over well in my young acting career, especially because I've always sounded like this. The roles that were being given to me, even before I understood that I was non-binary, were dreadful. So I was like, acting's not for me. That's okay. I like making characters and I'm having fun doing it. And so that was my pursuit of costuming. And I loved it. I still love costuming. And I left Disney because I actually got into a graduate program in design for entertainment media, specifically focused in costume design at UCLA. Huge prestigious program. They train a lot of film and TV costume design, but they also do like opera, theater, dance. They do all the disciplines because it's, as I said, it's designed for entertainment media. So it's everything. And so I always summarize it now as I have a master's in world building.
Ooh.
because it's also lighting. So it's like environmental design. It's also scenic design. It's also like we were working with technology and how to design with interesting evolutions of technology. I did a bunch of really interesting work when I was at UCLA, just kind of like diversifying what it means to design. And I graduated from that. And even when I was in grad school, I was working in film and television. Even before grad school, I had done a little bit of work in film and television. But I don't know if any of you know this, but film and TV is a horrible industry as far as like getting into it, staying in it, getting consistent work, getting work that is getting paid the amount that is comparable to the amount that you work. It's very hard. There's a reason why there's a lot of unions. I'm very pro-union in the industry, but also on the flip side, as a person who was not being given opportunities, I was also not getting let into said unions. So I started exploring other ways to tell stories while I was a PA on some really cool projects. I was the costume design PA on Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I did a lot of work for Marvel. I worked on Westworld. I've worked on basically everything except for Star Wars in Los Angeles. I've probably at least a little worked on it if it was from the last, like, from 2016 to 2023. I probably had my fingers in, like, some cool piece of IP that was coming through. It was awesome. And I love what I did there. I did some really cool stuff. And then I finally got my ticket into the union, which was working at Western Costume, the largest regional costume house in LA, doing research, which is one of my specialties and always has been. And I was there working and started going, what if I also, well, I'd already started. I started doing tabletop stuff for fun in 2019. So like perfect timing, because I kind of knew what was going on when 2020 hit and suddenly everyone was locked in their houses and wanted to do other stuff. So I had like toe dipped in thanks to a friend that I met at UCLA. And I was like, okay, I'll try this. And I tried it. And let's just say the first hit is free. I then ran straight for tabletop and was doing that pretty much nonstop outside of my 12-hour days as a PA, which became a little untenable because I would do 6 to 8 hours of tabletop and 12 hours. You do the math on that.
Yeah. What's sleep? You don't need that.
Yeah, who needs sleep? And so I was working. I finally got into the union at a normal day job style job that actually is only open for 8 hours a day. Unheard of in film and television. Doing really cool work, doing research for big projects. Lots of really cool, like recent TV films. Most recently in my career there, if it has like a uniform in it, whether that is a bus driver, a cop, a military organization, you name it, I was probably touching the research for it, which was kind of cool. But I also had become very present in the tabletop space by that point in time and was starting to get paid work as a TTRPG performer, starting to get interest in me as a writer and what other stories I could tell. And I had realized at some point the light bulb had turned on that my many disciplines, the cosplay, the costume design, the scenic design, my work at Disney, my understanding of intellectual properties, all of these things all stacked up to be like, oh yeah, I'd be a shoo-in for the tabletop industry, actually. I really like it. And unlike film and TV, where I was struggling, and acting, where I was struggling to find space for myself as a queer person of color, as someone who I always tell people, like, it's not like I can hide that I'm queer. I look gay when I walk into a room. This is just, and I'm not ashamed of it. And I know that, like, I'm grateful to live in a space where I am safe to just walk around and say that for the most part. I don't feel like I'm in danger. But the one thing it does do is it still closes doors for me as a very, very marginalized person. And I could see spaces where even if it was unintentional, I was being limited out of opportunities where cute European descended young women were getting opportunities well before me at like the speed of light compared to what I was doing where I was a PA for a decade. And so I was like, okay, I see that the industry is not quite ready for me. But then I got into tabletop, and by the time I had left Western, I was already a cast member in Transplanter RPG, which is an all transgender, people of color led, dark fantasy actual play series. And so and it's like non-colonial, anti-orientalist, like it hits all the things that for me, I care about as a storyteller on top of that. So I found a place where the doors were open for me, and the people there and the people that, I work with in the tabletop space, I'm always grateful when I look around a meeting, whether that is a production meeting or a meeting about a TTRPG that I'm helping create, or anything in between where I'm consulting on a project, whatever, and I read the list of names, or I look at who's in the meeting and I go, every single person in here is a person of color, queer, femme, like one of these marginalizations that in a lot of other spaces you don't get to see. I'm like, oh, this is great, actually. And like, I stopped being the one person of color in the room, and I started being one of everybody who is all people of color, queer people. And it's not weird for me to use then like pronouns when I'm talking about my NPCs and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, this is actually where I belong. So all of that huge circuitous route of me just kind of listening to the river has landed me in a wearer of many hats. But I am so grateful, and the journey to there is, to me, is so important that it's all of them. I do all of those things, even team sports. Tabletop is just team sports, but sitting down at a table.
Yes, I knew the sports thing, and yet it still was like, I forgot that too. Good grief.
Yeah, everything, you name it.
But that does bring up a good point that I think happens to a lot of us, which is the difference between a thing you are good at and a thing you love. Sometimes it's not going to be both of those things. And especially for a lot of us who are neurodivergent, it might take a little longer to connect that dot. That I'm good at this thing doesn't mean you have to do it. You need to be able to enjoy it too.
Well, and also, even if you love it, even if you're good at it, you don't have to do it for a living. And that was the thing that I was kind of wrestling with tabletop, was like, I love doing this. The amount of time I spend on it, I should probably find a way to get paid to write my like 700-page lore document that I wrote for myself, or do variations of that. But the place where I found a desire to turn it into like a career was more that I was like, I have a voice that is actually going to be helpful for this industry, especially one that is growing so rapidly right now. And I'm not a unique voice in the other industry that I was working in the way that I was being heard. And this is again, it's not a knock on my previous employers, especially because when I'm a researcher, all I am is a conduit for information, right? I'm just telling people how it is. The big thing for me has always been like, how do I love something? How do I understand that I'm good at it? Because again, like this is the thing. I didn't understand that costume design was a field until I was in college, even though I had studied costume designers in high school making cosplay. I don't know, man. Sometimes neurodivergence says
I don't always connect right away. It's fine.
But like I have a rule in tabletop, which is it has to be all three for me if I'm going to spend the amount of time and energy I spend on it, which is I have to love it. I have to continue to be relevant and good at it. But I have to also want to pursue it professionally. And those three things to me are so interconnected that I have a rule that if I ever stop playing tabletop for fun, playing tabletop games of any kind for fun, I have to quit the industry and do something else, because I have to love it or it doesn't work.
Kind of connected to just the flow and the number of things you've done in your life to get where you are. When we're growing up and we first start going out to the, the adult world and putting together resumes and things like that. And I'm looking at mine, you're looking at yours going, these are all over the freaking place. Like, what is any
You've also done a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of seemingly unconnected, unrelated things. But just the fact that, all these on paper, seemingly unrelated things can all come together to build something weird and magical and bigger that you would never have, like, if somebody put this in front of you, you would never have been able to, like, draw that connecting line.
For sure. And, like, one of the biggest problems is especially because, especially in the arts, but I feel like in a lot of places, especially now where a lot of traditional linear progression of careers is gone, right? We've lost enough infrastructure and enough social stability structures that what is a dependable career, even like the old joke of like, go work for the post office, it'll always be there, is not true anymore, right?
Right.
Millennial, like, it's a millennial perspective basically that our parents were telling us, like, and now if you tell that to a person from Gen Z, they're like, that's not real. No one works for the post office anymore, because the dependability of the job is so different. So because we've moved to a like freelance, like most of the work I do is freelance or contracted.
Right.
It's very rare that I get like a W-2 in the mail for my taxes. But because the like traditional pay structure is gone for a lot of people, and if it isn't gone, then it's the advancement structure that is limited, or it's, you know, again, talking about like systems of like oppression basically for especially marginalized people. If you can find a space that is open to your skills, your actual resume, which is one of the things that like I look at people like you or other people that we know, and I say like, what about this resume says don't hire this person, just because they've like gone through a few different iterations. Very trans story, right? Of like, I've been a few different people, but all of these people will help you do the thing. So like when people say like, oh, tailor your resume, I'm like, but what if it's everything? What if the job that I'm applying to, I would benefit from saying on there, I used to work at scout camps and I was a professional camp counselor for years, versus like just putting down like, oh, I have a master's in costume design. They're very different stories, right? And the fact that there are people with hugely diverse resumes working in, you know, various forms of live entertainment. And I know for you, like you've done a lot of management and things like that, where you're like, and I've done all of this other very specific skill that is very transferable to other things. And when I tell people like, yeah, I was an assistant costumer, they don't know what that means. And so I have to say like, yeah, I maintained inventory. I helped do orders. I liaisoned with contractors, you know, all of these things go into that, but it means nothing in just a list.
In just a list. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so interfacing with people and being like, I am all of these things. I am a complete picture.
Yes. You touched on something else in there, which was the transness. How much has following the river, this wild journey of what you do, been informed by, or vice versa, informed your journey in discovering who you are as a queer person?
It's so funny because I love a rebirth, right? Like one of the things in tabletop is that I'm famous for playing like sad dead characters who have been dead for a while. I play a lot of like ghosts. I play a lot of people who are, I love a reborn in Dungeons and Dragons. Like I play a lot of people who have died, not because I'm, you know, obsessed with dead people, which sure, but like, and one could argue I have a narrative obsession with it, but the reality is I'm interested in what it means to be alive again. To choose rebirth, which I think is the most trans story, right? And so in all of these different changes in my life, I found that I've gotten queerer and queerer as I've introduced myself to newer spaces where it's not like, like in college, I thought I was a cis het person. So don't even get me started on that. But then as college went on, I was like, something's going on here. Including that I had a teacher that kept being like, yeah, you don't get to do the femme examples of anything, actually, when we're talking about gendered performance. She was right. But going into then like when I went to Disney and I figured out that I was non-binary while I was working at Disney, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I actually have figured out I'm non-binary. I hadn't changed my pronouns. I would just talk about it with people and be like, yeah, you know, I don't really identify as just like a girl, a woman. And I was talking to people that in retrospect, I was like, they were really open and kind for people who like nowadays, if I said like I had this conversation with a Republican, a Mormon mom, and like 5 other people, they'd be like, that would never happen. But it did happen to me at Disney. And it's partly just because of the like openness of the people I was working with and the way that we all had community, which was a very, you know, theme park costuming is such a unique and special community.
So little weird.
Yeah, but there's a lot of especially queer moving parts in there that I think it was very normal for me to be having those conversations. So that empowered me. Then the next time that I entered a space, which was grad school, one of the very first things I went to was the GSA grad meeting and saw what kind of queer resources there were. I introduced myself using, you know, non-binary terms and things like that. And the moment that people were like, yeah, you should put your pronouns in your profile, which happened around then for your like emails and stuff, I started putting my pronouns in my profile. I wasn't like loudly like anti one of the girls, and especially in a very femme-led department. It was one of those like, come on, girls. It was very common. It just kind of, all of my cohort knew that I like winced every time it happened. You know, there it wasn't a problem that I pursued menswear, militaria, more like traditionally masculine styling and things like that. And I started dressing even when I was at Disney, but even more so in grad school, in a way that I thought was more genuine to my like external gender. And so then by the time I graduated, I was like, I had changed my like social nickname that all of my friends use. I had like shortly thereafter I like started realizing, oh no, okay, so this is the new gay thing. And I kept on finding, just like my career, just like a lot of other aspects of myself, I kept on finding a new rebirth within that of like when I was finally entering the tabletop space, I have never been anyone other than Kai using he, they, and she pronouns, which I think is very resonant for me because I'm here and I feel like I can full chestedly, even when I'm getting hired for a job by a major company, they're not going, and one of the girls. If anything, I am in a very like, especially trans mask, like social group that I hang out with. I very trans social group in general that I kind of flow with, but like I am overwhelmed by choice of talking to a queer person. And so in that way, then I can just be like, yeah, I identify as polyamorous. I identify as pansexual. And it's not like a thing when my character has a polyamorous, like not just a single relationship, but like a whole lifestyle in my main campaign. It's not strange for him to be talking about his partners plural, the parents plural of his child that aren't just him, that kind of stuff. And it's very like open and accepted not only by the shows but by the fans, because that is the expectation in the communities, that this is just fine, and it is fine, right? So we create the world we want to see by getting gayer and gayer every year.
What are you working on right now that you can talk about? Like, I know you've got Transplaner. I heard your name on Dimension 20.
That's wild. That happening was wild. Recent things, because some of it is largely done. Some of it is done in the case of Titan Takedown. I got to do some like back of house that ended up being front of house Daggerheart stuff. So I'm in the advertisement for Darrington Press for Daggerheart, which was very cool. I've just kind of been around that one. I'm not really like I'm not like a writer, developer, or anything. I'm just like around because I'm a tabletop person who likes game. In the bigger picture of things, let's see here. I've got Lori's House, which is actively coming out even though we are done recording, which is a actual play being produced by Tender Vicious Studios, who were the production company for Gudia, which is a multi-award, like mega award-winning actual play about specifically South Asian apartheid femininity. It is using a system called Bluebeard's Bride, which is a horror system in the first place, and it is exploring like very deep cultural things about South Asian women, basically. The South Asian cast done with a lot of love, and it took the indie webfest circuit by storm. And so their follow-up project is this project called Lori's House that I got to be pretty much on the ground floor of as the game master for the show. And it's using an all-new system, forthcoming system that I may or may not have my name on as well, called The Home We Remember. Is using tarot as the primary mechanic. It is a multiplayer TTRPG. It's called a lyric game, so it's not like really rules heavy. It's more like a vibes-based game. And ours also employs magical realism and the idea that when you remember things, you actually are rewriting your own story every time you remember. And this goes back to my idea of like rebirth and things that I like to explore in the first place. But the game takes that idea, and instead of just the like poetic idea that when you remember something, your brain might remember it slightly different than the way it happened, and the next time you remember it, it might even be slightly different than that. It takes that and says, but what if that's how you change who you are? And in some ways it is, right? Mechanically, when you pull a tarot card, you are actually delving into your memory to remember something that might change an event that's essentially a time loop that is the mechanic of the story.
Ooh.
So Lori's House is about a house burning down. It's about a community house called Lori's House, set in a fictionalized city. And the story then explores how the characters might rewrite their own memories to change that event. And you can see pieces of that change as the narrative progresses, which I think is very cool. So that's forthcoming, but as of this recording, only 2 episodes are out. There are many more that's coming, and the Home We Remember, the game system that is using is also forthcoming from Frivolous Bear Studios. I did have the prestigious honor of working on Dimension 20's Titan Takedown with their mini team, working with Mr. Rick Perry, the sensational, the one and only, doing a little bit of consulting and paint and texture work with them. So that was extremely cool. I'm just deeply grateful for the local connections that I've made, because a lot of my tabletop work before 2024 was all online, which is cool.
Mhm.
I work with a lot of people who are not in even the same state as I am, but to have the tighter LA community, which is where Dimension 20 and Critical Role and even some of the other one-off shows of recent years have all been filmed. It's yeah, that's very cool to be able to go and touch those communities and get to work with those people. So yeah, I do a lot of that. I have a lot of unannounced work that I cannot talk about yet, which is very cool, and I cannot wait to be able to talk about it. I keep on saying this is the year of me writing, so keep your eyes out, not only for me as a performer, which there is still more forthcoming performing stuff too, which I'll also talk about because that's also important, but writing is just front of mind right now. But yeah, I have a lot of writing things that are not announced, a lot of actual writing. I did release a game for fun called Tanko's Noodle Company, written for my friend Mr. Valiant Dorian for his birthday as a little gift, but I've also just wanted to write a game and publish it online, so I finally did that for Val, but for me as well. But as far as performing goes, Transplanter's about to hit their finale for Arc 3, which Transplanter is told in arcs, and to give you some idea, The Second Stranger was 8 arcs. We started the Chaos Protocol in 2023. We are just at the end of our 3rd arc, so we're still cooking. We got a ways to go. The Chaos Protocol has been just an astounding home. I feel so held as a creator. It's made me such a better storyteller, and getting to work in a community that is not only the show is trans forward and created by and made by trans people, but also a lot of our community is trans. And so being in a space that is just unashamedly we're queer. We tell queer stories. We make gay mess. We have what we should have number of butches in the world in each story, because our GM Connie Chung is obsessed with butch women, and you know what? They're right. So yeah, there's more of that. I always have a bunch of projects. I'm now in the main cast of The Fourth Age, which is a charity game, which is set in the One Ring, set after the War of the Ring. I'm always working with other groups like Bad House RPG. I've done a couple shows with them. I work with the Happy Jacks RPG Network, who I love very much, who are local here in LA, that do a lot more not only do we play the games, we tell good stories, but it's a lot also of game education. They have a great stream where they have game designers, because there's a lot of game designers in the community for Happy Jacks, coming and talking about their indie games, and they almost exclusively play indie games on Happy Jacks. So I've gotten to play a lot of Free League, because the people I like to play with a lot over there all play Free League games who I love. One Ring is also a Free League game, which I also play on that channel. But I've also played Mouse Ritter, which is a very, very cute game that's based on the original Dungeons and Dragons rules, where you're a mouse. And I was a mouse, and it was a good time. So yeah, I always have new shows coming out, especially with a lot of people, my usual collaborators, but I'm always branching out and finding new spaces to perform, and there's just more all the time. Can't stop, won't stop is the name of the game.
Talk about your Twitch channel.
Oh my gosh, that's right. That's another thing I'm doing. Yeah, I forgot.
You forgot.
This is the thing.
There's so many
thing
things
about wearing all of the hats, right? So over my time in the TTRPG space, I've realized that not only do I have a unique perspective as a person who is trained in design, and thus in a lot of I also have my bachelor's is in performance theory with a heavy emphasis in fan theory. So I love taking my understanding of design and storytelling in that way, and my understanding of fandom, fan crafting, storytelling in that way, and kind of merging them together. So my Twitch stream that I started doing, I was like, there's a space here in the TTRPG space for me to advocate for people to get the information that is not readily available, that teenage me didn't have, because I didn't realize that costume design was a discipline that you could study. Hilarious. That always tickles me. but I can take what I know and give it to people, especially at a time where there is such uneven education in the world, especially about storytelling. I feel like the world could benefit immensely from more media literacy. Just the world over, we'd be in a better place if everyone had a little bit more media literacy.
Boy.
Taking my knowledge and my passion for costuming and storytelling and turning it into a vehicle. Originally, I was like, what if I do YouTube videos? What if I do? And I went through a whole list of like doing TikTok shorts and doing like all of this stuff. And finally, I landed on a more conversational approach to start, and genuinely looking at my friends who all stream independently, kind of being like, I could do this. They're great. They're super entertaining. I love what they're doing, but I want to do that and educate at the same time. And so my channel is entirely dedicated to not only costuming and storytelling, and I do a weekly show called Seems Right, SEAMS, because I tell dad jokes. I'm sorry, everyone. Where I pick a subject, and it's 2 hours. All of my streams are 2 hours because I think that is the limit of many people's attention spans, in my opinion, especially when you're getting info dumped at. My 2 hours dedicated to talking about one subject in costuming. So like this one from this week was the costuming of Star Wars. And it was me getting on my soapbox and talking about how people's obsession with the Empire is just an obsession with Nazis.
What?
I know. And not in the like just aesthetic way of the costumes, but talking about the iconography of fascism and why it is destructive, and why being obsessed with the Empire as your favorite culture in Star Wars is a little bit fetishizing fascism. So like I talk about that kind of stuff. I did a whole deep dive on what is cosplay and why you hear me even in this interview refer to it as a transformative work, put it in the same category as a lot of fan fiction and a lot of fan art, both of which have been very lifted up as forms of art in their own respect. And while people appreciate cosplay as a like sewing endeavor, I think that there's an undervaluing it as a transformative work as a reaction to a piece of media, which is what it actually is. So like I did a whole video on that. And so I do a lot of that. And then I also pick a game and I talk about the game design, the costume design, the storytelling within the game. And so I played all of I think it was 2023 hit Stray, where you're a cat in the apocalypse. Running around a city full of robots, but all of this has incredibly interesting costume design, storytelling, world building all in it while you're running around playing a cat. So I have a good time playing the game. Stray is one of my favorite games to just play because you're running around as a cat. There's literally a meow button. You mechanically benefit from being able to scratch on things. But also talking about then the like insidiousness of systemic inequality, which is what a lot of that story is about. Or like I'm about to finish Unpacking, which is a game where there are no player characters. You're literally unpacking packing boxes of one person throughout their life. The first one is their childhood bedroom. The second one is their college dorm. But as you unpack these boxes and put things away and wherever you want in the room, so long as the things kind of make sense and don't block doorways, they kind of let you get away with a lot. But as you do that, you learn this femme person's life story about how she likes fantasy. You see her get into Dungeons and Dragons. You see her and the kinds of video games that she likes. You see her get into multiple relationships. She moves into a house with a cosplayer and you have to move her stuff in around all the cosplay stuff. Like, it's a very personal game that you never meet any of the characters in. It's so good. I'm obsessed. This is one of my favorite games. It was one of the inspirations for Lori's House for me. I go through and not only am I playing the game and talking about just like my enjoyment of the game, like a lot of Twitch streamers, I'm also there to talk about like why it's interesting that in this closet in the house that the apartment that her boyfriend lives in, that it's important that they didn't move his stuff. They showed that he did not clear space for her when she moved in. Ooh. And they mechanically make you work with it. And so like talking about the storytelling that is presented through the gameplay, through anything from like just design aspects. I'm also playing Baldur's Gate and talking about the Renaissance, all the way down to like the world building, game design stuff in the games as well. So it's a blast. I'm having a really good time. I made Twitch affiliate in the blink of an eye, which is I'm still shocked and grateful that it happened at all. I know people who have spent like years of their life trying to become affiliate, and I got it in under like a month and a half. So I'm so grateful for the enthusiasm, but also I'm so grateful to have the space to be like, hey, let's talk about how what you wear underneath your clothes, aka your undergarments, is super important, and defining what it even means to talk about costuming and fashion history and all of that stuff. So I really enjoy it. I have such a good time Twitch streaming. It is not only available on Twitch after the fact, but I have also been uploading it all onto YouTube. So
Awesome.
whenever there's time, you can come and vibe and enjoy that. Otherwise, I'm streaming twice a week.
Of the stuff that you've done the last couple years of this portion of your journey, what are you the most proud of so far?
I'm gonna say there's kind of an easy slam dunk for me, which is Transplaner. When I was cast in the Chaos Protocol, the Transplaner had already made a really big name for itself in the indie actual play space. I already really looked up to them before their first campaign had ever ended, because again, I entered the TTRPG space and went, gay show, I want to watch that. And then I watched some of it and I was like, wow, this is incredible. For those of you who are not like deeply familiar with Transplaner, the elevator pitch that I've gotten pieces of, I'll do the whole thing. It is an all transgender, people of color led dark fantasy actual play series set in a non-colonial anti-orientalist multiverse. I am a main cast member of the Chaos Protocol, which is the second campaign and a follow-up to The Second Stranger, even though they are not intrinsically interconnected. They exist in the same multiverse. So there's crossover for sure, and things that happen in the Chaos Protocol are definitely informed by things that happen in The Second Stranger, but they can be watched independently. The game master and executive producer of Transplaner is Connie Chong, by Connie Chong Online. If you're on TikTok and follow Tabletop, you've seen their TikToks. That's just how that works. I don't make the rules. The Chaos Protocol, when they were starting to spool it up, they had some people in mind that they were already in talks with. And I was peripherally, like, I had gotten to play with a handful of people from The Second Stranger. It had a huge cast, a core cast of 9, which is, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. But I had over time gotten to play with a few of them. And, you know, when you play at a table with someone, you get to know them a lot better than just like seeing them on the internet and having that like parasocial relationship. Actually, my second game ever live on stream in an actual play was with my current cast member, Valiant Dorian, where even though we hadn't like, we did a little bit of like table safety check-in about like romance, but we hadn't talked about his character possibly being interested in my character, and it just kind of like turned out that way throughout the story. It was very neat, but it's very fun to go full circle then and come back and go, Val was a main cast member in The Second Stranger. He played their bard, Voska, who rocks. We love Voska. She's perfect. When they were casting for the Chaos Protocol, I was just kind of around and had the great benefit of being in those talks and eventually being asked to join the cast as the last member of the cast. And we were talking about dynamics, and the thing that I always want to bring, and I even if I don't seek it out, I'm always including the fact that I am mixed, and adding levels of my heritage into my characters, even if it's not like, even if every character I play isn't half Japanese, half European, it ends up being that way, even if I don't intend it, because I am half Japanese and half European. That's just my life experience. But I wanted to pursue that directly, and specifically pursue exploring the like trauma of loss and grief that happens over time, of when you lose not only loved ones, but specifically like your land, your home in a physical sense, because the Japanese American internment actually caused a lot of like long-term systemic loss in the Japanese American community. So it's something that comes up often in my life. Like I'm fortunate enough to be pretty, you know, in a pretty good spot as far as like my family goes. If I need something, I can reach out to them and it's not a problem. But I think often about how like in LA, I would say maybe 5% of the Japanese restaurants are actually owned by Japanese people, because in the 1940s, they had to give away their restaurants because they were taken away by the US Army. And so most Japanese food is actually legacy, at least Japanese food in LA, was either a Chinese restaurant that started selling Japanese food because A, Japanese food was more popular and suddenly there were no Japanese restaurants, or B, they literally were like part of the community and given a Japanese restaurant because a Japanese person couldn't run it anymore. And so this is the stuff that I think about often of like, where does that pain then like inform a person? And on top of that, I'm also descended from Dust Bowl farmers in America. And so I just kind of like puzzle pieced it all together and also realized that one of the things as a mask person that I wanted to pursue was what it means to be a mask parent and be a mentor in that capacity. And just like kind of puzzle piecing all these very disparate thoughts together into creating my pièce de résistance of characters, the messiest, saddest cowboy dad on the internet, Mr. Zeinen Esch, who is a love letter to all of the characters that I have ever loved, but also to me when I was 14 and just trying to figure it out. You know, because I would have looked at Zeinen and gone, that guy's really cool. That would have been my favorite character in that TV show, you know? And now I've made that character for the next me to look at and go, wow. First of all, I'm sorry to everyone that looks at that character and goes, that guy's really cool because his life sucks and his life is hard, but I love him dearly. So it is always an extreme honor to play him, but also to like iterate on what that story looks like with a Black woman, with a trans mask main character. All of the characters in Transplaner are assumed trans unless otherwise stated, including Zeinen. But specifically, like to have these characters to get to tell a story with has been very, very special, and we get to do it with so much care. Like we have the dramaturg of Tabletop in our show with us, C. Thomas. So we get to do it with such intentionality where I get to spend an hour almost every week talking to C about what comes next for Zeinen and what my wishes enacted in the future of his story might look like. And it's the complete creative experience for me. And then on top of it, getting to get paid to do that by them it's everything, right? It's the whole package. It's the dream as a creative to not only to be able to tell stories, but then to do it sustainably for me as a person who lives in a capitalist society.
So looking forward, what is like a big goal you have that you are either working towards or wanting to work towards right now?
I think for me, I always have like a handful of what I call like shoot the moon goals. Because, you know, as a freelancer, especially as a creative, it's like nothing is guaranteed, especially when I'm coming from the place where like my goal for a very long time was like design for Marvel. And you know how many people get to do that? Like 7, maybe a year at most in the entire world, at most. And so creating like shoot the moon dreams, that used to be like my big shoot the moon dream. One of my shoot the moon dreams was being on Transplaner. So like anything is possible, right? And I'm in the process that I cannot talk about in detail of getting another one of those shoot the moon dreams right now. So it's like finding those goals and saying like, even if I don't get all the way there, you know, like a big dream that I have is obviously to perform in the largest space possible as a TTRPG performer. Transplaner is a pretty big space, and they can get bigger. There are very few that are bigger, in my opinion, than Transplaner. We are the #1 audio fiction podcast in the world last year, but like there are bigger, obviously there's like Dimension 20 and Critical Role and all, and they have like their whole other like ways that they bring people onto their shows. I don't know that I'll ever get there, and that would be fine. Of course, it's a dream that I have. Everyone in the space would love to show up on one of these shows, be in the big show, but also like there's big live shows that I would love to do. There's other creators that I would love to work with. So those are kind of some of my bigger shoot the moon dreams that I'm always like vaguely pursuing, but it's more also just like vibes, because it's like where can I go? Be a funny little guy, be a sad cowboy, whatever I'm up to that day. So that's like my ongoing goal of just like the vague nebulous, like I want to perform more in bigger and bigger spaces. But also I've been working on becoming a professional voice actor and doing a lot of development there, taking courses, doing that kind of stuff. One of the things this year is I am going to go do classes at Upright Citizens Brigade here in Los Angeles, that kind of stuff. Just kind of getting those acting chops back that I gave up on. So like there's training, like there's plenty of to be said about just having the ability and the desire to act. There's training that goes into it that also makes you just a more concise performer. And even like with the UCB program that I'm going to go do, like it can't hurt me.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a good time doing it, and it'll be good for even just what I do now. If it turns into something else where maybe I like do more improv, I'm not a funny guy, but sometimes I do comedy. Like it will only ever help me. So I don't, this is the whole like vibe of like, just go where the river takes me.
Yeah.
Because I want to do it. I think it'll be helpful to me in my careers. As far as like bigger goals, you know, I last year decided to bite the bullet and try going freelance. I'm really glad I did. The entertainment industry in LA kind of sucks right now. Between the like many years now of strikes that have been preventative of work, but also because the labor is being ported not only out of the state but out of the country. There's just less work. And so like it's a good time for me to go and try being freelance anyways. Like if I wanted to go back to working, there's places that would hire me. I am one of the most credentialed people in what I can do there. But my goal is to make freelancing long-term the most sustainable answer for me, so that I don't have to going back to sharing my time with a career that basically I'm pretty high up in where that can go, and I don't really want to go the places that could go higher. And so like seeing that that's like the ceiling of where that is, I like it. I'm good at it. I have a good time. My coworkers are great. But at the end of the day, I only want to do so much police research. The bigger goals besides that, like more concise ones, because it's one thing to say like, I want to make this sustainable. How? That's not really a goal. Is finding, you know, recurring writing work. So that's part of the whole thing of like, I have some games that I've started writing that have just like sat in my draft graveyard for a long time, like going back and finishing those. That is an attainable goal that I would like to pursue. I would like to see Laurie's House get a lot of success. So working hard to like promote the work that I do. Show people, hey, I'm good at the thing that I do. Like I don't GM for actual play very often, and I don't want it to be the thing I get known for doing. Not that I have like great respect for the great GMs of the internet. I think that my performing is best served playing individual characters or playing lyric games like Laurie's House, where I can just kind of vibe. It's a little bit of jazz. It's a lot of like poetry and a lot of talking in more magical realism. That's kind of where I thrive as a GM, because otherwise I will spend 12 hours a session planning and I will not do anything else, because I love a really planned out session. As I said, I have like a 700-page lore document for my homebrew D&D setting. I don't want to write a TTRPG setting guide to then run an actual play unless I'm getting paid a lot of money, and hopefully that setting guide is also going to see the light of day. And there's only one Matt Mercer in this world, and I don't think that I'm going to be the next one. And this is not the Mercer effect. This is me saying there are 4 books that have been published of just mechanics that can be read of Exandria. And then he also does these big, beautiful opening speeches and things like that. That's a lot of time that I would rather spend as a performer of individual characters. I would like Laurie's House to thrive. I would like to see more lyric games thrive. The bigger thing that I'm cultivating right now is my independent creation process, kind of on my own. I have the machinations and plans to start my own solo actual play over on my Twitch channel. I'm trying to keep a lot of my Twitch channel very insular, so that it is only me. If anything ever stops it, because it's the whole like joke / not joke about the big bad guy in tabletop is scheduling. I'm very hard to schedule.
What?
I know. I'm very hard to schedule. And so I would like the problem with scheduling to end with me. And scheduling other people stresses me the hell out. And so me managing my own schedule makes it so that I can then create my own content and not worry about other people's time, both as far as scheduling, but also like, I don't want to ask a lot of someone that I can't pay, and I don't have the money to pay someone. So like not only using like ethical production practices that I really firmly believe in. It's not to say that like unpaid shows are unethical. If they're passion projects, Godspeed to you. But for me, because my goal is to do something that is so like unique in the actual play space, that I wanted to just be me. I want to just support the work that I'm doing, and also just there's not a lot of solo actual plays. And I've had this idea bouncing around for like a year, and I'm like, I could do this. This would be really fun. So I'm starting a little work on that. That kind of stuff. Very like small, tangible goals, and then of course the big, lofty ones. I would love to write for like WotC, or maybe not WotC. I don't know. I like D&D. I don't know if I ever want to write a setting guide, but I would love to work with other big creators to create world building. So yeah, maybe it is Wizards, maybe or Paizo. I love Paizo because they're a union TTRPG house. I love working with Darrington Press. I worked with them on For the Queen. They're a delight. I have a lot of friends that work all over the industry. I'd love to do more writing. I would love to do more consulting, literally bringing my skill as a designer and a world builder and a storyteller in that way, and bring informed diversity to this media of like, I might not be a cultural consultant, which is something that I always remind people. Like, I'm not here to tell you if you can use this from a culture. I'm here to tell you that there are cultures that do something similar or have an idea that you might want to explore. That is one that, from what I can tell, it seems like it's an okay thing for you to explore. But I'm not going to say, I'm not an indigenous person. You shouldn't just take my word when I say like, these are the practices of indigenous peoples around the world, that this is what they do. And so I always try and caveat it with that. But with the understanding, there's a lot of things that you could just research and do respectfully without. It's always better to hire a cultural consultant. But if I'm saying like, here's 30 different NPCs from backgrounds from all around our real world, I don't know how many game companies could hire 30 cultural consultants, Yeah. But at least if they bring me on, I'll have done the research of like, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't show this kind of thing. This is a sacred thing that only people of this culture should be touching. And I can go with authority and say like, yeah, you can wear a kimono. That's fine. But that's kind of the limitations of what I feel like I have the authority to speak on. But I do love coming in and being like, these are cultures that you should look to, that are non-Western cultures, or that are Western cultures that have interesting subcultures and things like that. And also just being able to give like proper terminology helps people in the creative process to be like, when you're referring to a drape of fabric over someone's shoulder, you're talking about a chiton, a toga, a sari. The list is very long of just what that garment could be. So I kind of come in and offer options of like, this is what this would traditionally be made of. This is the one that if you use it, you will end up looking like you're taking something from another culture. That kind of stuff. Trying to stop people from accidentally appropriating or purposely appropriating things that they shouldn't. Never happens.
Never.
So yeah, like my goals are, some of them are very like practical, some of them are very amorphous. A lot of them are just like, right now, I became very aware last year that I don't know people in LA in the TTRPG scene. And I was starting to get work just from people in LA that happen to know me. And so turning that around and being like, no, I want to be a part of the community here in LA, and making the conscious choice to like go when people invite me to do stuff. Not just because it's networking, but because like I want to be in a community. I want to physically know these people. Like I've physically been with my castmates in Transplanter, and nothing was more fulfilling, right?
Especially now in the current climate, like community has been, like, I have talked to so many people where they're like, take that word networking out of your vocabulary. Right now, what we need more than anything is community. And that's what this is about. Like, yes, it might result in opportunities at some point, but that's not why we're doing it. Yeah, it's because
shared experience. It is so much harder to hate someone to their face, and it is so much easier to see eye to eye and have shared experience when you have common cause to do so. And I've really enjoyed getting to know other trans creators, specifically in LA. Some of the like indie AP people. It's so funny. I meet people in LA and they go, oh, I didn't know you were from LA. I'm like, I've been here the whole time. But I also understand because all of my work has been on the internet. and I
Right.
didn't go out and do things. So of course people didn't know I'm in LA. Like
No, you live
it's
in a
no shade on
computer.
them. Yeah, I live in a box. This little screen, that's it. This people assume this is my entire world. Right behind me is these weird color screens, which is a very reasonable thing to just not know. But to go out and hang out with people that either have shared interest, shared experience, and it's not all like people who work in tabletop. It's also just people who have been hanging out with a lot of people playing Magic the Gathering lately, because that's where like the cool kids hang out. I don't know. I've been calling it neurodivergent nerdy golf. And I've been having a good time with it. My friend got me finally playing after people have been trying for like 2 years to get me to play Magic the Gathering. I'm having a good time with it, but it's also the thing that's getting me out of the house and meeting new people and going to the cool nerdy social spaces and kind of broadening my social circle. Because I think something that I had to internalize, and this goes back to like working on Lori's house and being on Transplaner and being like, I had a very strange like 2020 to 2021 experience where I was working. Everyone else I knew was just sitting in their houses, and I was in a community because I was working. Was it a great, healthy community? Probably not. People encouraging people to just go out before we knew how COVID spread. Not the safest or best idea, and got people definitely sick. But I wasn't alone. I didn't feel alone. I felt maybe overworked and a little scared, but at the end of the day, like I had someone there that if I had a COVID concern, she'd be like, then don't do that. And it's okay. And so like having that sense of community, having that sense of like seeing someone, even if I was tired of seeing them, I still saw them. I still someone that I don't live with, that I don't have a lot of like other common reason to know, and being in community with them honestly is the only reason I got through working. And so I then found that like thankfully with Transplaner we find ways to hang out outside of just like playing games. We're more than just like professional working partners. We are friends. Like again, I wrote a silly little game for Val for his birthday, not because I professionally needed to, but because he's my friend. So that kind of stuff, having community, and I always tell people on my streams as well, I advocate for people to go build community amongst themselves, not just parasocial ones with people that they see in their little screens. Because being with someone, seeing their face, talking to them in a camera, talking to them in a microphone, hearing their voice, even if it is hard, even if there are barriers to that, even if you can't do it in person, it makes you feel more connected to the rest of the world, and it stops some of this like super isolation that we're all experiencing, like the pandemic of loneliness on top of the pandemic itself. And so I took my own advice to heart, especially because Lori's house is about community and community building, and went, why don't I do this in my own neighborhood? Why don't I do this with people that have invited me to, go grab drinks, go grab dinner? So I've tried to make the habit of saying yes and going and being in community with them, and continuing to cultivate my own like tighter circle of people, but remembering that community doesn't have to be people you'd even invite over to your house. Community can also be the people at your friendly local game store. It could be the person who works at your comic book store. It can be people that you see at the bar or the local restaurant that you frequent or your gym or whatever, and be in community with them and have that shared experience where you and the other person understand that you have common cause to succeed together. And that to me has become one of my like big driving things is that capital C community is something we cannot lose.
What is exciting you right now? What are you into? Like, you obviously enjoy the TTRPGs you're in, and like you just said, Magic the Gathering, you're finally playing that, but like what's getting you excited out in the world right now?
Good question. I think some of the stuff that is actively exciting me right now, maybe it's just front of mind because I just watched Andor yesterday. No spoilers, but is I look forward to the future of fandom as we are in a tectonic shifting place. And I have found myself further and further outside of traditional fandom spaces, not because I I'm not in them. I'm in fandom spaces, but they're very niche tabletop fandom spaces mostly, that we also talk about like Arcane and Wheel of Time and, Star Wars and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, like, our common cause and the thing that we're all talking about is, if I'm on the Transplanter server, we're probably talking about Transplanter. But I've like been reconnecting with my love of Marvel outside of being an employee of Marvel, which has been a treat. Playing a lot of Marvel Rivals, a theoretically plotless game, even though they let the characters snipe at each other in ways that tickle me greatly. So it's a lot of like finding way. I've enjoyed having a renaissance as a fan, understanding that like Tumblr is a space that is great. I hate scrolling media, it turns out. I don't like TikTok. I can only spend maybe 10 minutes on Instagram. I fully don't use my Facebook anymore. I only have patience for like Blue Sky for like maybe 10 minutes, and then I stop scrolling, because scrolling media in this day and age, just like after grad school, for whatever reason, I just couldn't do it anymore. And so like call me an old or whatever it is, but I don't like scrolling media. So that's like 90% of fandom. 90% of fandom spaces, they're all on platforms that encourage scrolling media. And so finding my new space as a fan of just like a person who has very intense things to say, but for the most part, I just sit in my little corner and enjoy my little shows, has been actually kind of a big treat for me of not seeking community in those fandom spaces anymore. And it's not that I don't have fandom friends, but my primary community is in tabletop, where we then talk about Star Wars, we talk about Andor, we talk about, all the other shit that's going on. But my connection is not limited to that fandom, which is something that for the most of my life has been a connection based on a particular fandom. And then that fandom, either collapses in the face of a lot of them, or they move on, the show or media ends, whatever it is, or it doesn't end, and more than half the fandom is deeply toxic Star Wars. What? Who said that? And so like being able to love my shows, my fandoms, without the crushing judgment of the wider fandom, or even the crushing opinion of a wider fandom. I've been on a whole tear about how in fan media, something they teach in fan theory is that if you think of media and consumers of media as a swimming pool that has a very, very big shallow end and then like one very deep end at the very, very end, most of consumers of media are on the like 90% shallow end, where they may just watch it and not even think about it. And then there's the deep end of all the people. I know, it couldn't be me. But then the very deep end, the people who are not only like, this is the big name fan end, this is where like, and I'm still there. I still make fan transformative works. I do cosplay. I make art. I write fan fiction, even though no one knows who it is. That kind of stuff. I'm still there, but embracing that I can also be among the shallow end viewers and not have to go deep diving to go find my community has been really healthy for me, of not worrying about fandom infighting and ship wars and that's just it's never done it for me, and it's been very off-putting. And so for me to go like, oh, I don't need that, actually. I don't have to care. And also internalizing that like a lot of that stuff ends up being sexist or racist or homophobic. I'm no longer at odds with myself being a part of a community where I love a thing and I can be critical of it, and people won't be like, why are you dogpiling on the show? Which is what happens to me in fandom spaces, where I have the unpopular opinion very, very frequently. And I can just enjoy my show and enjoy it in the corner, talk about it with my friends, and move on. So that's been my big thing, is finding my new way of being in fandom and sharing my joy in it.
Yes.
Not quieting the fact that I'm a mega nerd, but tempering it with like, I can watch Star Wars shows and say like, yeah, we could use a little bit less of the exploitative nature of the way that they show minorities. We could embrace storytelling for more people of color in these universes. And so like being there and being able to take my knowledge and stand on it and say, like, yeah, I know this as true, actually. I believe this full-chestedly, and I feel like I have the backbone to stand here and say it, has been very freeing for me. And I've been having a really good time just like finding my new nerd self.
Good. I mean, we've touched on a lot of things, but I was going to ask if you have a piece of advice for other queer creatives out there. And, you know, obviously we've talked about importance of community and kind of just going where things take you and not necessarily putting blinders on in terms of a direct path or a what's a straight line? I can't do anything straight.
We're queer. We don't do straight.
We don't do straight. But yeah, is there any other big piece of advice, like general, for other queer creatives out there who maybe are still like stepping into owning themselves in a queer creative space?
I think, I mean, besides finding, if you have the mobility, which I know that not everyone does. I am very fortunate that I've been able to follow the river, as it were. I did not have familial expectations keeping me from changing directions. I did not have too much capitalistic expectation on me that would limit my my mobility. So, like, obviously, yes, follow the river if you can. If you can't, find spaces to create joy as a creator. But the bigger one, I think, is if you find yourself in a space that rejects you, listen. I stayed too long in places that didn't want me. And I am much older than a lot of my peers. And to that end, like, with that comes experience and wisdom and being able to talk about falling on my face quite a few times. But I look back in retrospect and I go, if only I had seen sooner that I wasn't being given runway. I was being told this is the box you fit in and this is where you go, largely by groups, more of a system and very significantly less of individuals. Embracing that systemic oppression and systemic limitations exist for minorities. And if you're a queer person, congratulations, you're a minority. And if you are able, then finding new places to be, because the world is hard. It's hard enough right now just to be queer. Yeah. Swimming upriver is soul crushing. Like, I look at how unhappy I was in these spaces where I was like, my story doesn't matter. It took being in a space full of queer people of color for me to go, oh, I have a story and people want to hear it. Oh, okay. Because as a queer person, especially if you are multi-marginalized, whether that is disabled, person of color, and queer, you have a story. You have one inside of you that is burning to be told, whether that is through a practical discipline of management or creative pursuits or, you know, anything. Anything can be informed by an outside perspective as a marginalized person. And know that your story, your unique journey, even if you could name 3 other people that you think have the same journey as you, they don't. And all of the jokes aside about, you know, trans people picking funny names and things like that, or the same name or whatever, like, you have your own story. And you will only ever be your best advocate if you find spaces that you want to be in. And if someone closes a door in your face, you can knock once or twice, let them try, show them, hey, I just want to be here. But if they keep closing that door in your face, know that they're going to do it again. So the best thing you can do for yourself, for the story that you have inside of you, is to acknowledge that sometimes you look for another door. There are enough queer spaces, enough marginalized people in this world that somewhere, hopefully, there's a door open for you. And if you don't find one, Kool-Aid man your way through that door. Make your own. And hopefully you have a community with you to go on that journey, because that's what it takes.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking time with me today, Kai. This has been
I love you. Are
so
you
good.
kidding me? I was so tickled when you reached out to me.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Can
And
I brag? Can I
honestly
brag
glad to be doing this
about
again.
something that I don't know if your viewers know, that I was your best man at your wedding?
I know, like, I don't think they do. Like, the weird, again, with the weird ways life works. Yes. Yes, this is
Yeah.
Kai, who was the best man at my wedding.
I love
So
you. Are you kidding me? This is such a treat.
we have stories.
Oh, we have capital S stories.
Yes. But for those who are not in our weird little group, where can people find you and follow your crazy, crazy adventures?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, you can find me on all social media platforms as estelofimladris. Yes, that is Elvish. Yes, I chose it a long time ago. No, I'm not changing. You can find me Blue Sky, Instagram. Those are the ones I mostly use. Blue Sky, but if you need others, I am on Instagram. You can occasionally find me on TikTok, very rarely. I am in other places, but the main thing is Blue Sky. I'm also on Transplanter RPG. Basically, whenever there's transplanter stuff, I'm there with bells on. Ongoing wise, you can follow me over on my card page, which is estelofimladris.card with 2Rs.co. Where I try and keep an updated schedule. And you can, of course, always follow me over on my Twitch page, where I stream twice a week, and Seems Right, my show about costuming and storytelling, and in my game nights, where I continue to talk about costuming and storytelling while playing video games. Yeah, and listen to Lori's House. It's coming out probably still while this show is released.
Super excited about that one. But I will absolutely have links to everywhere you can find Kai within reason down below in the description for this video. So yes, somewhere around here when I remember how YouTube works. But yes, thank you so much for taking the time today. And I am very excited to see where you pop up next, because you do be surprising us with popping up like every time. Like I will get
jump scare.
It's like a jump scare. I will get texts from people I haven't talked to in a while, have been like, I was just watching Titan Takedown, and was that Kai's name? It's like, or there was that one time you were in a Try Guys video, or like
the Quicker Roll ad. Oh, the jump scare.
Jump scare with Kai. And just when people come out of the woodwork to be like, was that Kai I just saw or heard about? Or I'm like, yes, it was. So I am very excited to see what the next jump scare might be. But that is going to be a wrap for now. Thank you again for taking the time, and to everybody out there, if you are a queer creator who wants to come and tell me about your story, I'd love to hear it. Please reach out. That info will also be below. And otherwise, I will have more exciting stories to share from other queer creators soon. Bye, all.